Well, I feel like we maybe took a little longer of a break than would have been beneficial for trying to. What am I even trying to say? It's like the case in point. Because it's been a couple weeks. And now I'm like, I
Yeah.
have to edit this. How do I edit a podcast? This is our 10th episode. Happy 10th episode.
Happy 10th episode. We have like birthday candles or something. What did you want to chat about this week?
Well, we have a little bit of feedback that we got from
Oh,
someone other than
feedback.
Dad at this point. Doesn't happen that often. It came from Mom. And of course, I didn't write any of it down, so we'll just try remembering everything. It was mostly about the family vacation podcast episode. Some clarifications about things. It was solidified once and for all that the Washington, D.C. hotel room was not the plan, or at least the one we got. Mom apparently had gotten a room that was bigger than a normal room, but not the suite that we
Not the
ended up in.
presidential suite.
Yep. And apparently, she said that Dad went to return the van and didn't come up to the hotel room right away. And apparently, he said when he walked to the up to the door for the first time and it was a double door, apparently he said, "What did she do now?" or something like that. Like, what did she do now? So there was that. And then there was clarification about my getting sick at the Texas Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas from milk. Apparently, I had like 4 glasses of whole milk, and
Mm.
5-year-old me was not able to contain that.
21-year-old me wouldn't be able to contain that.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you the last time I had whole milk. Probably then. Except I guess maybe some of the chocolate milk I've had in the past. But other than that, and then other things also from the Washington D.C. trip, she said that when you both of these are about getting sick. Great. But when you got car sick, apparently not only did you throw up onto your stuffed frog, you also threw
Mm-hmm.
up onto a brand new change of clothes.
You know, that doesn't surprise me. I don't remember that, but it doesn't surprise me.
Yep.
I bet Mom was not happy.
Yeah, it sounds like she was trying her best to deal with the situation. And then
I
she
couldn't
also
help it.
unearthed the picture from South Dakota of all three of us with our ice cream cones, with you looking down at your cone thinking, how am I supposed to eat all this?
It was huge,
It was huge. Oh,
especially
she
for
texted. It's on my
four-year-old
phone.
me.
Yep. She also said, unrelated to the podcast, I heard this weekend, that apparently, do you remember when we thought you broke your arm in Kirkhoven?
Yes, I do remember
Apparently,
that.
apparently that was 2 weeks before we were supposed to go to Disney World.
Yes, that is correct. I do not remember that, but I know I've been told that before because Mom was just like, "Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
now, not right now, like it has to be now."
So she said she was trying to figure out how she was going to get some sort of garbage bag situation to put your casted arm into the garbage bag so you could like do water rides and stuff.
Yeah, I ended up, for listeners who are not Mom or Dad or Emily, I was at the playground with our grandpa. Grandpa was sitting on a bench just watching me go. I was on some monkey bars and just fell off them. And then I had to like go to the hospital because they thought I broke my arm. I ended up not. It was just like a sprain or something. I don't know if they ever actually diagnosed what was wrong.
Yeah.
That's what
Apparently, Grandpa's response was, I
I
swear I
saw
was
the whole
watching her.
thing.
I saw the whole thing happen.
Mom was like,
Which
"No,
is
you weren't. You
very
didn't
grandpa.
know."
I think that
It's
was
not the
all of
first
the
time I
things.
hurt my arm.
As always, since I didn't write stuff down, I will feel like I forgot something. But I think that
I
was
was
all of the recap.
Yeah, I was telling the story to people about. So that was the first time that we thought I broke my arm. The second time, Emily and Eric got me a skateboard when I was in first or second grade. I was never very good at it. I didn't really do anything except go in circles around the garage. And at one point, it was like the night before the third grade orientation, which is where you just show up at the elementary school and meet your teacher. The night before that, Dad got on my skateboard and he like immediately stepped off. And I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to show you. This is how you ride a skateboard. Got on my skateboard, went down the driveway, fell off, and cracked my elbow.
Mm.
But I didn't even like realize that something was wrong. Like um I was like rubbing my elbow and didn't notice I was doing it, and then Dad was like, "What's wrong with your elbow?" I was like, "Oh, I just always do this, I guess." And then a few days later, we had to go to the doctor.
Oh, I don't know if I knew about that. I guess I would have been there though.
Yeah, I was in a sling for a while because it was like I was in a. I got X-rays. I was in a sling. They took me out of my sling, and then a little bit later, they like re-looked at the X-rays and put me back in a sling.
Would you have been 8?
Somewhere around there.
So I would have been turning 16 right around then. I think that's how that works. So that would have been, yeah, I would have been in the house. I don't remember that.
It happened.
Ugh, I never had any broken bone scare. I was in a bike accident when I lived in Colorado. This is the third time I'm retelling this story this week. I don't remember why I told it this many times. But I was trying to jump from a sidewalk down to the road, and my back tire slid out as I was taking off, and I knew I wasn't going to land. I had enough time to process that I was going to end up on the ground before it happened. And
Didn't you
then,
also get hit by a truck once in Colorado?
yes, kind of. So I was walking from a restaurant back to the seminary. It was a very long distance because there wasn't a whole lot close. I'd been watching a football game. So I was trying to text somebody to be like, hey, can I get a ride from you? Are you available to give me a ride? And as I was texting, walking down the sidewalk, I came up to an intersection and I was like, I should stop texting right now so that I can pay full attention to what's happening around me as I'm crossing this intersection. And then walking across this intersection, a truck pulls up to like next to me to go from a side road onto the main road and didn't see me, and so I had to like scoot out of the way, and he hit my hand with his truck. And I was like, after all that of like taking the time to tell myself to stop texting as I'm crossing this intersection, I still got hit by a truck. At least a piece of me did.
I mean, better than Emily getting hit by the car in a Panda Express, not Panda Express,
Panda Garden Buffet.
Panda Garden. Panda Garden Buffet parking lot.
Yep. So if
Do you
anything
remember
ever
the one
happens
time-
and someone asks what's wrong with my hand, I got hit
Do
by
you
a
remember
truck
the one
6 years
time
ago.
we went to a like Chinese buffet with Grandma, and Grandma was like, "You get whatever you want," and I ate like lime jello and fried dough, and she was like, "You are not eating enough." It's like, "This is what I wanted." She wasn't very happy with me. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that, but I can imagine.
That was in Florida.
It sounds similar to what I ate at a Chinese buffet.
That was maybe the time when I was sick and like didn't know I was sick until we got home. Do you remember that where I was like crying on the airplane because my ears hurt so bad?
I don't remember that either. Apparently, I don't have a
Mm.
very great memory, if this podcast has told me anything thus far.
Yeah, I was like crying on the airplane because my ears hurt so bad. And when we landed, we went to the Cheesecake Factory, and I was just like zoning out. And mom or dad was like, "Are you okay? Huh? What? Yeah, I'm fine." And then later we went to the doctor, and I had an ear infection in both ears and pink eye.
I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, it was not a very fun time.
Oh, yeah, that would not be fun. I'm sure it's funnier in retrospect than it was at the time.
Yeah, that was the only time I got pink eye, and it was miserable.
I don't think I ever got pink eye either. Not that I remember. I did get a. There was one time I had some sort of an eye infection, and I think it's because I was riding my bike and a fly flew into my eye while I was riding my
Oh,
bike in ninth grade. So then I had to take these steroid eye drops to make the infection go away. It was not
I
fun.
got prescribed eye drops for my allergies, and they made my eyes like burn, so I just stopped taking them. I should probably tell my doctor.
Yeah, probably.
I don't think he was the one who prescribed it. I think it was someone else. Because he's not technically an allergy doctor. My, my primary care dude.
I don't know how that works.
I don't fully understand it. I just know that I sent a message once asking if he could renew one of my prescriptions. And someone else responded and was like, he wasn't the one who prescribed this. Ask the lady who did. Then I just went in person to the doctor. I was like, hey man, I need this refilled. Oh yeah, sure. Anything else? Shows me my list of drugs.
Well, I think that's everything and more from the feedback portion of the podcast. Now, perhaps we can pick up where we left off last time and actually move on to what we said we were going to talk about.
The college experience.
The college experience. And I think it's rather fitting since that's why I saw you last weekend. I was helping you move
Yes,
apartments.
moved into a new apartment, new roommates,
Yep.
new side of town.
I did realize after our last episode that we didn't spend a whole lot of time talking about our experiences in like school before college. It was a lot more directed towards demographics and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps this time we will discuss more about our personal experiences. But I think it'll be easier to do that this time because we don't have the same experience. Like we didn't
Yes,
have the
we have
same experience.
very different experiences of college.
Yeah. We didn't have the same experience growing up, but we, for the most part, went to the same school, so we had some context for what the other person went through.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much for the rest of our schooling.
Yeah. So where did you go to school, Eric?
I went to Bethel University in St. Paul, Minnesota. There are multiple Bethels. I went to that one. They are not all related, I guess. There was one time I met someone who went to Bethel College in Indiana. I was like, oh, I went to Bethel, and then realized it wasn't the same Bethel.
Mm. And
Yeah.
we've mentioned it before, but I go to Iowa State University, public school, public university in Ames, Iowa.
In Iowa. Iowa State
And I think
University of Florida.
science and technology.
That's like
That's,
California University of Pennsylvania, which I think is a real thing. Yeah.
I think just kind of like, I feel like you can tell that we had different schooling experiences just based on the two different schools we went to. Because I am at a public university, public state school.
And I went to a private Christian college.
Yeah, so we've had some
So everything that happened for
Wildly
you
different
out,
experiences.
everything that happened for you out in the open happened at my school behind closed doors. Maybe not quite, but
There was one time I was home for a party that Emily was throwing, and we were just talking about differences in our schooling experience. I don't fully remember how we got on that topic, but like drinking and partying was not a thing that was accepted at your school.
not
Um,
publicly.
yeah, but it's very accepted at Iowa State. It's almost expected of students,
Which I do think
not
is
by like the
unfortunate.
university. Yeah, it's not by like the university. The university's not like make sure you're drinking alcohol. But it's kind of like the people expect that when you go to a school, one of the party schools. Apparently, Iowa State's party school. Didn't realize that until I was already here. They'll expect that you'll have some
I feel
drinking
like
experiences.
I feel like everywhere is a party school. It's just like people say, "Oh, that school, that's a party school," but like I think it happens at a lot of schools. Like growing up in Minnesota, St. Cloud State was considered a party school, which like I have no idea, but I think at the U of M there are similar events happening. You don't have to go to St. Cloud or to Duluth or to wherever.
Yeah, I've seen some lists of like ranking Iowa universities or Iowa cities based on like alcohol consumption or just like general party vibe. Ames is pretty high up on that list. On all of those lists.
Yeah, it also has a whole lot of people compared to other Iowa schools. At least Iowa has like two pretty comparably sized major schools. Whereas like Minnesota's just the one and then smaller offshoots.
Mm-hmm. I think UNI is probably a fairly large school as well. We got like the three main schools in Iowa: Iowa State, University of Iowa, University of Northern Iowa.
I would not know. But anywho, you want to talk about how we ended up at the schools we ended up at?
Yes. So I I don't even remember why. I initially applied to the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. And I applied, I went on a tour, it's like, oh, yep, this looks great. Love it. And I thought that was going to be the end of it. And then I was like, okay, I'm doing marching band. Duh. And I looked up a video on YouTube of the of their marching band, and I just looked at it. I was like, this is sad. Like this isn't very good. And I had in high school we had done a competition, the youth and music competition at US Bank Stadium, and there had been some what's the word, the bands who come who aren't competing.
Oh, I know what you mean.
Yeah,
Exhibition?
well, yes, an exhibition band. So we had a few different college bands that were exhibition bands, and Iowa State was one of them. And I had told mom after the youth and music competition, I was like, wow, that Iowa State band, they were just so good. And so then once I watched the video of University of Illinois' marching band, I was like, wow, this sucks. Mom was like, well, you know people who go to Iowa State and you like their marching band, so why don't you apply there? Okay, Mom. So I did. I was accepted. I was also accepted to the University of Illinois. And then as soon as I read the financial aid letters that I got from both of them, I was like, I absolutely 1,000,000% cannot afford the University of Illinois. It was 47,000 a semester, and they offered me zero financial
Whoa.
aid.
A semester?
I believe so. I don't know. I could probably find the old emails.
That
I
would
was
be
like, "Yep,
absurd.
I am not interested in this anymore." So that's why I chose Iowa State. Now I don't even do band.
Yep. Got to see it happen, though.
What
Yeah.
about you?
So when I was looking at schools, I had 4 schools on my list. I had Minnesota, North Dakota State, North Dakota, and Bethel in that order going into senior year. And after doing all the visits, Bethel leapfrogged above the other 3. So I was looking for an engineering program at the time, leaning towards aerospace, just because I like aerospace type things. And so the only school that had that program in particular was Minnesota. But then Bethel's engineering program, they don't have enough or didn't have enough classes or accreditation or whatever the deal is to have a full engineering program. So they had what they called a 3-2 program, which is where you would do 3 years at Bethel, do like a bunch of physics and whatever type stuff, math stuff, like basically prereqs, and then you would transfer to an engineering program at a different school. So my thought process was that I would be able to go to Bethel for 3 years, have a Bethel experience, and then transfer to Minnesota for the next 2, and then have a state school U of M experience. And then it would be like the best of both worlds. So I applied to Minnesota and to Bethel. I filled out half of the NDSU application. I did what I could on a paper application, and then it told me to go online. But by that point, I had already been accepted at Minnesota and Bethel. So I said, I'm not going to finish that. And then North Dakota told me that based on my test scores and my GPA, that the application was a formality. Like they just had a plug and play system where it's like you have this score and this GPA, so this person is accepted, at least in my case, or would have been had I applied. Anywho, so it was between Bethel and the U of M, and I was hung up on money because Bethel's tuition was far greater than Minnesota's, thanks to being a private school versus a public school. And I would have had in-state at Minnesota, not like you with your other options. So I chose Bethel eventually because I out of nowhere won a scholarship from Coca-Cola.
I remember that.
Very surprising, very unexpected. And the scholarship helped pay for the first year at Bethel. So I was like, well, I guess I'm going to Bethel. And then after year 1, I dropped out of the engineering program. And so stayed at Bethel for 4 years instead of 3 there and 2 elsewhere. So that's
I think
how
you
ended
should
up
tell
at
the
Bethel.
story of your Coke scholarship. I remember it.
You remember it,
I remember it happening.
but you don't remember the specifics.
Well, the way I remember it, we had gone to the store, got our groceries. We got a 12 pack of probably Coke Zero, maybe regular Coke, I don't know. And we get home, and someone opens it, and the first thing that comes out is like a can that's not a real Coke can. And I was just like, what is this? And open it, just like, you won like a scholarship. What? That's how I remember that happening.
That's sort of right. So a lot of the basic pieces are there. So it was a 12 pack of Coke Zero that the award came in. Hooray. Mom had asked Dad to go to the store and pick up some Coke Zero. And at the time, Mom would go to Target and get like the little mini bottles, like a 6-pack of those. But I think at the time, Dad was working at Target and just didn't want to be at Target if he didn't have to be. So he went to Cub and bought a 12-pack, which Mom still drank, even though it's not what she would have, the shape she would have purchased. So she was going through the 12-pack and got to the end of the 12-pack, and it was that thing. And it was like, it almost was like a little I don't know if people know what like a Tootsie Roll bank is, but something like that,
Mm-hmm.
like the size of a can, and then weighted to feel like it was the weight of a normal can of Coke Zero. And it had like a Goldie Gopher thing on the outside and maroon and gold and whatever else. And Mom said that she thought it was just something like some sort of a recruiting thing of mine that had fallen into the box or something. But then when she opened it up and it said $10,000 scholarship, it was a different story. And so I don't remember, somebody went back to Cub to look around and see if this thing was advertised, and it wasn't. And then there was like a number or something that you had to call. And so somebody called the number, and it was legit. And it was a $10,000 scholarship that I think could either be used for the person who got it or for like a dependent. And it was valid for like 17 years into the future.
Jeez.
So like if you had a 5-year-old, you could wait for the 12 or 13 years or whatever until they got into college and then use it then. But I was going in less than a year. So that helped pay for year 1 at Bethel.
I could have used that money.
I could have used more of that money. I think we all could have. But yeah, so I got through that, and then more money sophomore year helped pay for that. So I got through Bethel, 2 years of Bethel without having to take out loans. But then I went to graduate school and got all that money anyways. But that's another story for later.
I've taken out a lot of loans.
Me too.
I did get, like I said, I didn't get any financial aid from the University of Illinois. And I did get some from Iowa State, so I have a scholarship that renews every semester for 4 years. That's a big help, but I mean, it's still expensive, and I don't have in-state tuition. I'm paying out-of-state tuition. Because
Yeah.
Iowa, even though it borders Minnesota, it doesn't have reciprocity with Minnesota.
Yeah. Reciprocity is the thing where states bordering other states or near other states will have not in-state tuition, but lower than a full tuition out-of-state thing. So like had I gone to North Dakota State, their reciprocity made it so that a Minnesota student would only pay like $300 a semester more than a North Dakota student, which is like nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Iowa doesn't have reciprocity with any state. They have their own deal. Because I briefly looked at Iowa State as well when I was in 9th grade, and I thought about doing architecture, and when I was in 11th grade and thought about doing meteorology. I didn't do either of those things.
Yeah, programs for both of those things, I think.
Yeah, that's why I was looking at Iowa State.
It's definitely a meteorology program.
Yep. And then when I was a math major and thought about doing meteorology again, I was looking at Iowa State's graduate program. Didn't do that either. I'm still waiting to hear back about an internship with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. It's been 9 years. I don't think I got it.
Yeah, I think we had very different experiences just in general because of the schools we went to, but I think it's interesting that we had a similar kind of life experience with going into college set on, in both of our cases, you were set on doing engineering, I was set on doing physics, so science, and then getting like a year in and just like, I don't want to do this.
Yep.
Switching to a liberal art.
I knew after the first semester of physics that I probably didn't want to do it, but I had a department scholarship and felt like I needed to finish the year. So I took physics 2, and I finished the final exam before anyone else because I did less than half of it, because that's how much I understood. Then I left and became a math major for a year. And then after the second semester being a math major, when I took 2 math classes and a computer science class, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Then I stopped being a math major.
And then what did you end? I've asked you this so many times. What did you end up graduating with?
I finally ended up graduating with a double major in reconciliation studies and third world studies, and then I had enough math credits to get a math minor without having to do anything after sophomore year.
I thought I was going to get a math minor.
If I had had to take more classes to get it, I would not have done it. But it was very easy to declare a minor when you've already done all the classes for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the third world studies major. It's very easy to declare that when my study abroad trip covered half of it. Cool. I'll do that. That sounds great. Will I use it? Probably not. I thought I might use it. I thought I might end up abroad at the time. No, not so much.
Now you feel connected to Minnesota.
Yup. Moving to Minneapolis in September. Out of the suburbs and into the city.
Yeah, when you move out of where you are, can you double check and make sure that I don't have a hat there? I lost one of my hats.
I haven't seen anything, but I guess I can.
Absolutely no idea where it is. Because I
What?
literally just moved, so I had to go through all my things. And it didn't fall out anywhere. Where is it?
Don't know. So yeah, that was choosing our schools. Also, I should say, I was talking about this with Mom. I wasn't really super interested in doing engineering. Like, I still am not entirely sure what an engineer does. I just was being told by people around me that I would be good at being an engineer. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll do that. And that's why I ended up looking at the programs I did. Which, like, now in retrospect, I maybe should have done some sort of like a communication major, because that's more where my interest lies, like in this podcast and things like it.
Yeah, I didn't really want to do physics. I always wanted to do astronomy. But Iowa State didn't have a specific astronomy major, so I had to go through the physics department. That's why I ended up where I did.
Yeah. You were the only one of us three kids who was dead set on one thing for like the entirety of growing up. Like, I bounced between a bunch of different stuff, but you were astronomy from the time you were like 5 years old.
Mm-hmm. I don't even know where it came from. Just like, this is what I want to do.
Astronomy.
I'm doing it. I didn't know what an astronomer did. I just don't know where it came from. Now here I am, finishing up an astronomy minor in classes that I don't fully understand, but
That's how that goes. I think Bethel had one astronomy class, which I didn't take. I think it was for education majors, but it was in the physics department. That's probably why I was interested in aerospace, is because astronomy was one of the science things that I was good at and enjoyed. Astronomy and meteorology. What a surprise that those are things I looked at doing.
the astronomy major or minor is 15 credits.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, and I have 12. Well, no, that's not right. No, that is right. I have 12 astronomy credits, but 3 of them don't count because we have an astronomy, like, intro to astronomy class, and then we have another class that's kind of like an extension of that class, and only one of those 2 classes can count towards your minor. I took both of them. So I currently have 9 credits counted towards the minor. It's just one more class this coming semester, and one class this coming semester, and then one in this spring. And I'll be done with my minor. I thought I could handle a class a semester.
Probably. I probably could have done a math major if I'd only had one math class a semester. As it was a little much. The only reason I ended up doing as many classes I did that sophomore spring is because I was trying to fit prerequisites, because I'd already added reconciliation studies as a major probably in the fall, maybe going into the spring. But a prerequisite for the reconciliation program was a study abroad trip. And then with the requirements for the math program, I needed to get other prereqs filled before I was able to take classes I needed in order to fit a trip abroad into my schedule and graduate in 4 years. But it probably worked out better because I realized I didn't want to do math.
I fit some study abroads in to fill absolutely zero requirements.
Yeah.
But to fill my desire to travel.
That was like my Amsterdam trip. Which I guess technically was it fulfilled the general requirement, but then I filled the same requirement again later. So I was like, well, whatever.
Yeah, my first study abroad, I was thinking like, I really want to do a study abroad, but I was told that physics majors don't do that because it's hard to get classes that'll transfer. Because Emily was abroad for a whole semester. I want to do that. I was told it'd be difficult. And then like later, maybe like a week after I tried talking to my advisor about studying abroad, I got an email from a department that was like, do you want to do a short-term study abroad? There's one over spring break that you're eligible for. Heck yeah! So I went to London for a week. Well, 10 days. It was fun.
And you went to Eminem's world.
I did go to M&M World. And then later, I was interested in doing another study abroad, so I just found a whole bunch of programs that would fit in my schedule. So I ended up doing a month in Italy. It was a summer class.
Yep. That's one way to get it done. That's my Amsterdam trip was J-term. I know you don't have J-term, but Bethel had J-term.
We just have the 2 semesters and then summer, optional summer.
I wanted to do another semester abroad, but the way Bethel worked is that I wouldn't have been able to get financial aid for it. I would have had to pay for the entire thing. And since my most expensive semester at Bethel was my study abroad trip run by Bethel, and I would have been doing another Bethel run study abroad trip, it would have been very expensive. So I stayed at Bethel.
Yeah, my most expensive semester was the one where I did the London trip. Because I still had normal tuition. I was also in the dorms, so I had to have that housing contract. And because of my housing contract, I also had to have a meal plan. So I paid tuition, room and board, meal plan, and then an additional few thousand for the London trip. Yeah, my loan's paid for. Gonna pay them back. Maybe.
Over the next 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
Hey everyone!
Hey everybody, my name's Eric.
And I'm Elena.
And we are the co-hosts of the 2 out of 3 podcast.
Yep.
And we've come back together today to talk to you guys about our Patreon page.
Anyone who's familiar with the podcasting world knows that podcasts are mostly self-funded productions. Patreon is a way for us to connect with patrons who will help fund our productions with us.
So if you're watching this video on Patreon, you're already here, so go ahead and take a look around. If not, there are 2 different ways you can find us. You can go either to patreon.com/2 out of 3 podcast or to 2 out of 3 podcast.com. That's patreon.com/2 out of 3 podcast or 2 out of 3 podcast.com. Now back to the show.
Yep.
You said something that made me think of something. Oh, living situation. So like how I just came down and helped you move between apartments.
Oh, yes.
I was on campus 3 out of 4 years. And then so I was on campus freshman year, sophomore year. Junior year I wouldn't have been living with anyone I knew, so I decided 2 weeks before the fall semester to live at home instead and to commute. And then in the spring, I was in Guatemala, so I wasn't on campus or at home. I was elsewhere. And then decided to move back on campus senior year because I had hated commuting. Because you have to, like, be awake enough to drive, which was problematic. It's also the only time I've ever spun my car. Was driving home from Bethel one time in November. It was like midnight. No one was on the road. I hit an ice patch and spun.
Sounds like me when I crashed my car. I ran over a double curb because I slid on some ice.
I saw the
Stupid.
double curb.
Why would you design a double curb?
Because you got to separate one part of the road from the other.
Yeah, I tried backing up because I was like straddling the two curves. I tried backing up and it just like wasn't possible. So I had to go forward and I was just like riding. I was driving just like on this bike path. Because it was the only way I could get my car to move. It was embarrassing.
Sometimes those things just happen. It's the nature of ice.
Yeah, but my living experience, my freshman year, I lived in the dorms, as I imagine most people do. And then I absolutely hated it. So, my sophomore year, I signed a lease with someone who I was friends with and someone who I barely knew. We lived together. We had a lot of roommates come and go, just based on kind of the nature of our apartment. I lived in that apartment for 2 years, then I just moved out and into a different apartment. Because I figured it would be cheaper for me to live off campus. Because the apartments that I find, they're cheaper than room and board. And I also don't have to get the meal plan, which is an extra like $4,000 a year.
It probably, if I had known people living off campus, it probably would have been cheaper. I mean, it was probably cheaper living at home that semester. But I liked being around the things that were going on, and I liked being close to the school so that I didn't have a commute other than, at most, my 5-minute bike ride. Plus, Bethel's campus is very small, so everything's pretty enclosed.
Yeah, not quite the same experience here. Iowa State is very large. How many students does Bethel have? Roughly.
I think it's, at the time, it was 3,000 undergrad and 6,500 overall with graduate programs and whatnot.
Yeah, because Iowa State's student population is like somewhere between 25 and 30,000.
Yep, a little bigger.
Just a little bit. And geographically, it takes up a whole bunch more area.
Yeah.
Well, there was one time I was...
is Ames.
Yeah, I was driving through part of North Ames, and we passed something that said, like, Iowa State, and Mom was like, where's campus? I was like, well, technically this is still campus. But where's campus? So we were, like, 2 miles away from Central Campus. Because Iowa State just has things scattered throughout the city of Ames.
Yeah. Well, she went to the U of M. She should know what it's like to be on a big campus. U of M's huge. Mm-hmm. It spans across 2 banks of the Mississippi River and St. Paul. I just rode on a rental scooter through the U of M campus on the East Bank.
Why would you get a rental scooter?
Because I had a friend here who wanted to get on the rental scooter. So I rented a scooter. We rode it around for like 40 minutes, give or take. You like download an app and then rent the thing.
Yeah, there's a South Park episode about those.
It took a second to learn how to do it, but then I got to figure it out. It was quicker than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it's probably not just like a Razor scooter.
Nope. It's electric.
Just like navigating Iowa State, because like I remember dropping you off at Bethel, like you get on one road and just like drive through the entirety of campus.
Yep, pretty
It was
much.
like, you like to get to Eric's dorm. One year you drove a little bit down the road. The next year you drove a little bit further down the road. And your last year you drove just like all the way down the road.
Until there was no
But
more road.
exactly. But at Iowa State, it's like you're gonna want a map if it's your first time here.
Mom said when she was at school, she would like take a day before the semester started to like work out where her classes were and to walk to all the different classes to see where they were. And I think I kind of did that my first semester at Bethel, but then it's like we have 6 academic buildings. There's not a whole lot of needing to work out where your class is.
Yeah, my first roommate that I ever had, I remember one time I came back to her dorm. Oh, what'd you do today? And she and her cousin had got on a bus, and they thought that the bus was going. Where did they think they were going? They thought they were going to like Target or something, and they ended up in the middle of nowhere in North Ames. And they're just like, well, this isn't right. If you don't understand the bus routes, it's very easy to get them all mixed up.
Yeah. The Bethel bus route was pretty simple. It went to
Yeah,
like
'cause
5 places.
the buses that Iowa State uses, they're the public buses for the whole city of Ames. So it's not just like a bus on campus. Like if you get on the wrong bus, you can go from one side of Ames to the other.
Like a normal city bus.
Mm-hmm.
I used to live that life. For a year and a half in Denver, I lived that life.
There was one time this past summer where my car was in the shop for some reason, and I was like, well, I guess I'm taking the buses to work, and it took me like an hour to get to work because I had to stagger bus routes, like
Yep.
get on specific buses.
The bus routes, when I worked, the first job I worked in Denver, I had, depending on the day, there were like multiple different bus routes that I took. They all took an hour from my apartment to work or from work back to, well, on campus apartment. But it was an hour one way every single direction. Because when I moved to Denver, I thought that since the light rail ran right across the street from the campus, I would be close to one of the stations. No, it's a 20-minute walk to the station. Great. And then I crashed my bike the first time I tried to use it. Great.
I don't think I ever got like hopelessly lost on campus. There's one specific building on campus which like everyone gets lost in. It's like a rite of passage. Like you have to get lost in what's it called? What's that building called? Gilman. You have to get lost in Gilman at least once.
I don't think that was really an issue.
Yeah, with your 6 buildings.
Maybe in the seminary library, which I don't think exists anymore. Sad day. The seminary library was definitely the quietest place on campus at Bethel, but it was not open very long. There was one undergraduate library. It's a freaking zoo. It's so loud in there. I remember one time there was this kid, a guy, one of the football players, who was being a little noisy, and I like didn't notice it at first. But I was up there studying, and I had a friend in a different part of the library who like walked over. He's like, "Have you heard so and so making a bunch of noise?" And I was like, "No, I haven't heard it. I haven't been paying attention." So then he like went back to where he was studying. And then a couple minutes after that, the football player was just like, "I'll whip your head, boy." And my friend walked right back over to me and was like, "Did you hear it that time?"
Yeah, on the topic of football, I think another thing that differentiated our experiences, like sports. Because
Yep.
you're what?
Division 3 across the board.
And we're a Division 1 school.
Yep.
So we have like the typical college sports with the big buildings for sports.
Yeah.
Big football stadium, basketball arena. Is that the right word? Arena?
Yep. I do think for where our schools are, like division wise, we have pretty comparable success in football programs. Because Division 1 has all bowl games, but everything below that has playoff series. And Bethel made it to the playoffs twice while I was in school. In one of those times, they made it to the semifinals, which was exciting. And then they lost to Mount Union. It's like a Division 3 football powerhouse. Plus, I got to go to any game I wanted to for free as a student.
We have that students get into any game except for football and men's basketball for free.
Yeah, the ones that make money.
Mm-hmm. Those ones you can buy season tickets.
Yep. Yeah, Bethel was free. Even then, I didn't go to very many sporting events other than football. I went to one baseball game. I didn't go to any basketball games. I went to a couple hockey games, but only freshman year. Hockey was off campus too. You had to go up to Blaine. And then I ran cross country senior year. So that was fun. I didn't go to very many football games because I was running instead. So I technically was a student athlete. I was a collegiate student athlete. Go me.
Yeah, I didn't want to do softball like with the school, like for the school. I didn't think I'd be good enough for that, and I can pretty much guarantee I wouldn't have gotten in. But I was interested in doing club softball. The practices were just too late at night. As much as I miss playing softball and as much as I would like to play again, I'm not about to go to practices at 10 p.m. Like, I have things to do.
Like sleep.
Yes.
I guess not in college at that time. Definitely was a night owl and excelled as a night owl in school. I excelled at being a night owl. I didn't really excel much at school as a night owl. Those early classes are suckers. Or they suck quite a bit. My last year in seminary, I only had to go part-time. So I arranged my schedule to make sure I did not have any morning classes. Because I'm not all about that.
Yeah, my freshman year, I ended up stuck in a math class that was 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Monday through Thursday. It sucked. So ever since then, I've made sure to not take morning classes. So I think the earliest class I've taken since then, I took a 9 a.m. philosophy class the next semester and then just stopped going to it. So I didn't want to wake up that early.
That's another difference.
I've had a couple different 9:30 classes, but everything else I'd put off until at least 10 or the afternoon if I can.
Yep. I never once skipped a class. I think I missed one class because I was sick. And then I had a couple of trips that I had. But other than that. And there was one time, senior year, I was in the training room getting worked on. And decided to continue with whatever was being done instead of going to class. And then apparently no one showed up to that class period. And the prof was very upset. It was like a 12-person class. I had a schedule one time, my fall of sophomore year, where Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I had an 8 a.m. and then a 9 a.m., but then I was done for the day. And that actually wasn't terrible, because then, like, you're done for your day, and you, like, go to breakfast, and then just, like, not have anything else to do. And they were 3-credit classes, so they were only 50-minute blocks instead of an hour 10.
Yeah, I have skipped several classes. 'Cause I don't think I ever skipped like an actual math lecture when I had that 8 a.m. math class, but I definitely missed a few recitations.
Recitation.
Mm-hmm.
That was the end of my physics career. Happened when I skipped my first recitation in November. That was it. That was the nail in the coffin. My physics career was dying before that happened. So my first semester at Bethel, they started building some biology labs right next door to the physics classroom. And they started work promptly every morning at 9 a.m., right when our class started. And so we braved it for the first couple months. And then after a while, we moved the lecture from the physics lecture hall, which used some big air quotes for lecture hall. But we moved it from there to this area on campus called the Underground, which was just like a venue, like a small venue. There were like little concerts or other similar type things there. But they tried holding a physics lecture in there, and it did not work very well. And that was the beginning of the end. The end was skipping recitation.
Yeah. My philosophy class that I ended up skipping for like the entire second half of the semester, I still did well in. I'm not entirely sure how.
Did you not have a participation grade?
Well, we did, but I think I told Mom, I was like, well, I think that I participated enough.
While you were there?
Yeah, I think I participated enough for the first half of the semester. And then this past school year, this past fall, I took a math class. And it was a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class. And on Mondays, I'd be coming from work because I worked 6 to 12 and then I had class at 1. Be coming straight from work, sit down in class, could not understand a word my professor said. He had a very heavy accent. So then I stopped showing up on Mondays. And I was like, well, if I'm not showing up on Mondays, why would I show up on Wednesday or Friday? So I stopped showing up to that. And then it was like, oh, I have my second quiz today. I showed up for the quiz and we did like a review session before the quiz. It was like, I have absolutely no idea what any of this material is. So I dropped that class.
I will say that it was very, very nice to not have the anxiety about having to do math or science homework for every single class session once I dropped out of those programs.
I get that.
That's also part of now that I'm done with school. It's nice to not have schoolwork to do. Even though I'm not necessarily pleased with where I'm at right now in life, it is nice to not have homework to do. That's just sort of weighing on you. I had a lot of
math and physics assignments were always difficult for me. And then I didn't feel comfortable asking for help. So I just suffered.
Sounds familiar.
I did in physics, though. I will say I did very well in physics labs. Because even though our labs usually didn't turn out very good, I was capable of writing a decent lab report. I maybe didn't understand what I was writing, but I could write it.
Also sounds relatable. I neither liked nor disliked physics labs, but I did not look forward to having to go to labs every Tuesday or Thursday, whichever day it was, depending on the semester. I don't know why I thought I was going to do a science thing. I didn't like science that much.
I remember when I first came to Iowa State, I had to take a math assessment test so they knew where to put me for math courses. And I did so poorly on the assessment. And I was just like, I did so much math in high school and I learned so much. Why can I not take this basic algebra test? I remember crying to someone about maybe I'm not meant to do math and science. Maybe I should just go into English. And she was like, well, why would you do that just based on one test? And now here I am, 4 years later, not in math and science.
So, you probably didn't have this experience. In ALP, the class we talked about last podcast episode, streaming wherever it is currently streaming, ALP senior year, like right around winter break, they would have alumni from the previous class come back after like their first freshman semester and like talk about college for one day. And there was a guy who was older, was in school. He was older than that, but he was back visiting his sister. And he was talking about how he had been at the U of M in their math and science school, whatever it's called. I don't remember anymore. And he had switched from a science program into the College of Liberal Arts, into a liberal arts program. And as he was talking, I was sitting there in class like, that's not going to happen to me. And then it happened to me. Hooray. So I would recommend going undecided if you're undecided. Because then you can kind of maybe get a better feel for what you want to do.
I would also recommend, if you are decided and you realize that you're not enjoying it like you thought you would, try something else instead of just trying to stick with it for 2 years before realizing that you really don't like what you're doing.
Yep.
Because then it's going to be your junior year and you're going to be taking freshman level courses with a whole bunch of freshmen.
I had very many major and minor combinations. There was one point where I had one major and 3 minors. It's like, what are you doing? That's what happens when you're in a very short major program.
Yeah, I remember sitting in the class once just looking at the course catalog, as I do. I had already decided that I was going to be doing my 1 major with my 3 minors, and then I was looking through the requirements for some of the majors. I was like, well, why don't I do, instead of 1 major, 3 minors, why don't I do 2 majors, 2 minors?
I almost did that.
Why don't I do 2 majors, 1 minor? Why don't I do 2 majors that don't relate to each other, 2 minor? Okay, no. Why don't I do 2 majors, 3 minors? It's like, what are you trying to do?
I looked at my 4-year plan and the course catalog at least once a week until I graduated. And I was in the registrar's office at least once a semester. But that's what happens when you bounce between different things because you're not sure what you want to do.
Yeah, I bounced between a few different departments. And then it just got to the point where I had accidentally taken some of the required classes for a women's and gender studies major. Well, I guess this is what I'm doing now.
I almost had a modern world language minor. I was 1 class away. So for that minor, there were like all these different prereqs or all these different requirements, and then you needed to have so much of 2 different languages, like so many classes. And because I had so much Spanish, all I needed was a 102 level class from a different language. And since I'd taken 3 years of French in high school, I probably could have talked my way into the 102 French class. But instead, I decided I was going to take Mandarin Chinese and do the 101 class and then the 102 class. And that was going to be my culmination of my modern world language minor. And then I realized in the first week of Mandarin that I probably wasn't going to gel well with the professor, but I held on anyways until I couldn't drop the class anymore. And then the prof at the start of the semester had said that everyone in her class always gets an A. And so it became my mission halfway through that semester to not get an A in that class. There was one quiz where I got 3 points out of 20, and she still gave us all A's. But I did not move on to the 102. And after that point, I didn't care enough to talk my way into French 102 with, as it would have been, a bunch of freshmen taking French.
Yeah, because I switched out of physics into animal ecology. And I was like, well, I'm gonna add on a fifth year, but I'm gonna go for my animal ecology major. Then I took biology 1 and 2, both with a whole bunch of freshmen. And I will not be taking any more biology.
I knew that after 10th grade. Oh, and then when I switched out of engineering, I didn't have to take chemistry, and I was happy to not have to take chemistry. I would have been in the class with a couple friends of mine, and there were times after I dropped it where the main computer lab was right across the hall from where that class was being held. So I would be in the computer lab and I would walk out and look in the window and look at them and make eye contact with them and then just walk away. And it made me feel so good every time it happened.
Because in high school, I took 2 years of biology because I took an IB course. And I didn't necessarily enjoy it. But I was pretty good at it. Like, I was better at biology than I was in IB physics. So I thought, well, I like animals and I'm okay at biology. I can make this work. But then actually taking the biology classes, nope, I cannot make this work. I passed them, but I was not happy about
it. Just like, I'm just imagining a book title. I passed them, but I was not happy about it. The Elena Beck story.
No, my memoir is going to have a better name than that.
Physics was part of the reason that my GPA was as low as it was, though.
Me too! The math classes I had to take are the reason that my GPA is as low as it is.
I looked back. I thought I'd had a higher GPA than I did, and then I looked back within the last couple years. I was like, oh, that's a lot lower than I remember. Oh, I don't feel so great about that.
Yeah, because I kept... Let's see. I did okay in astronomy. Like, not great. But my math classes, which were all... Well, they made me take pre-calc, even though I took pre-calc a long time ago. Got an A in that. And then in Calc 1 and Calc 2, I think I got a B- in both of the classes. Then I dropped out of Calc 3 because I didn't understand what was happening. Then I was like, okay, I'm going to take differential equations and just not take Calc 3.
How'd that go?
And then I dropped out of differential equations because I stopped going to class because I couldn't understand my professor. I probably shouldn't have passed Calc 2, but I was in an honors section of it, and so we did a couple like extra projects. And because of the extra projects and being like graded as a group, that was a good chunk of my grade.
Two things that conversation made me think of. Number one, the best grade I had in any math class was Calc 2. I got an A-, and it's because technically I was retaking Calc 2 because I passed the AP Calc test with a high enough score that they would have let me take on the credits for Calc 2. But instead I retook it and got an A-. Number two, I should not have passed scientific computing, which was the only computer science class I took. But I got a B because I had done well enough on early homework assignments that based on how the grades were weighted, I got a B, even though I didn't know what was happening by the end of the class.
Yeah, because the other thing with our honor section of Calc 2, we had like weekly quizzes, and our professor, his way of grading the quizzes was, as long as you made an attempt to at least try and do the problem, you would get a 10 out of 10. Which was great for my grade, but it was horrible for my understanding. because he didn't actually like write any comments about where you went wrong. He just like, yeah, you tried 10 out of 10. And so then when it came time for the exam, I was just like, I have no idea how to do any of this.
Yep.
So I pulled like D's on the exams.
There was one exam, I guess I guess what you would have called Calc 3, I think was our multivariable calculus, I think was what the class was called. Anyways, I had an exam there where he told us, the prof like let us have a little cheat sheet, like index card, that you could write whatever you want. You could write anything you wanted onto the card. And then he told us that 2 specific problems were going to be on there with like different numbers, but like these 2 specific problems are going to be on the exam. So I completely wrote out the entirety of both things so that I would get the points, even though I didn't know what I was doing very well. Oh, my math program. And then I had one semester where I just took discrete math, which is basically just writing proofs. It's almost like a logic, like just writing the logic proof or whatever. But I did well enough that even once I left the math department as a student, I was a help session TA for that class. So I was initially supposed to be a TA for that class in one of the help sessions where a lot of people go to. Like, people would specifically go to the day before class was. So they'd go like Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday. So I was supposed to be on one of those days. And then I got switched to a Wednesday, which not only did no one come for that class, no one came for any of the classes on a Wednesday. There was hardly anyone. I was doing that, and then I was also grading homework assignments for a pre-calc class. And the entire semester, I think I had 4 students from that class come in at any point in time. Any point in time during the semester, I only had 4 students from that class come in. And I was like, this is interesting. I did that for one semester, and then I left. And then I went to Guatemala.
Yeah, I took an Intro to Proofs class, and I really liked it because it was, like you said, logic. And I told someone who was a math major, I told her at one point, I was like, oh yeah, I took Intro to Proofs and I really liked it. And she was like, well, why aren't you a math major then? No one likes that class except for the math majors. I was like, well, I really liked the logic, but I dropped out of Calc 3 because I can't do an integral to save my life. She was just like, well, the math major is a lot more about the logic. It's like, well, yeah, but I also need to take Calc 3, which I dropped out of. And I wasn't about to try and retake all of these math classes just because I had enjoyed one class.
Yeah. You maybe should have done philosophy. A lot of philosophy is logic work.
So I took an Intro to Philosophy class, and it was the 9 a.m. class that I stopped showing up to. But like halfway through the semester, I got an email from my philosophy professor that was like, hi Elena, I was taking a look at grades, and like it was clearly a pre-typed out email, like, I was taking a look at grades and you're doing pretty well in this class. I noticed that you already have a major, but you might be interested in looking to add philosophy as a second major or even a minor. I'm just like, I haven't been to philosophy in like a month. Like, you have no idea who I am.
But you're doing well in the grades.
I was doing well in the grades.
I took 2 philosophy classes, both with the same prof. I really liked him a lot. And the second one I took, partway through the semester, the prof decided that he was going to stay awake as long as he could until he started hallucinating. He wanted to see how long it would take for him to start hallucinating. So it was a Tuesday, Thursday class. So he's telling us about this on a Tuesday, started on a Wednesday, came to class Thursday, one day into his quest to to stay up, not go to sleep. And he was like, yeah, I was just watching infomercials all last night. I bought a magic bullet. And then come back the next Tuesday, and it had been 3 days, and on the third day he had started hallucinating. And he's telling us about this stuff, but then like he starts to realize that he doesn't remember our class session at all from the Thursday. So he had like gone through all of Thursday, not just all of Thursday, and didn't remember Thursday. It was like, this is an interesting person and an interesting decision to make. He did say that he wasn't driving, that he was taking public transportation during his quest to hallucinate from sleep deprivation.
That sounds like a decision I would make. A bad one. I definitely pulled a few all-nighters last semester for no reason other than I did not want to be in my apartment, so I just stayed in the physics building all night.
I never technically pulled an all-nighter. There was one, I think the latest it ever got was I went to bed, I think at 5, maybe 6, and then got up at 8 for a 9 a.m. class. Physics. Yeah, it was physics freshman year.
There was one day I had to do a speech, and after you did your speech, you would have to do like a self-reflection. It's like, what do you think went well in this speech? What do you think went poorly? Like, what are you proud of? What do you think you could do better? And in my whole self-reflection, I was like, honestly, I pulled an all-nighter for absolutely no reason before I did this, so I don't remember anything I said. And I still somehow got an A on that self-reflection. It's like, I was honest. I reflected on what I thought happened.
I think it was my first semester in seminary. I went to a Chick-fil-A grand opening, which are always on Wednesdays, and then go into Thursday morning. We can discuss Chick-fil-A grand openings at another time. But the point being, I slept in a parking lot Wednesday night into Thursday. Didn't get the greatest of sleep, as you could probably imagine, sleeping in a parking lot. And then I had to go do a presentation at 8 o'clock the next morning in class. And I was happy to get some free Chick-fil-A meals. I was not so happy about going to class the next morning.
Yeah. Last semester, I drank a lot of Monster.
I never had an energy drink either. I made it through a graduate program with no coffee or anything of that nature.
Yeah, just because then during the winter, so spring semester, but it was still like, actually no, fall semester. It was like November or December. Doesn't matter. My apartment wasn't insulated properly, so my room was always freezing. And so I got some really bad nights of sleep because I would go home and like shower, go back to campus, go into the physics building, and sleep on like a couch in the physics club room. And then wake up at 6 in the morning to go move my car from campus to the off-campus parking lot and then go like get breakfast. It's amazing that I passed these last couple semesters.
Sorry, parents.
I'm sure Mom knows. Sorry, Dad. But I got a parking ticket once, and I think it was Emily was like, "Why'd you get a parking ticket?" "Oh, I was parked in the physics parking lot." "Why?" "Because I slept there." "What?" "I slept in the physics building. This is a normal occurrence for me." That won't be happening this year because the club room is going to be closed because of coronavirus.
Yep.
I'm trying to keep people off campus as much as they can. Or at least out of the physics building as much as they can.
Yeah, I don't know what would have happened for us. H1N1 was going around when I was a freshman. The guy next door to me got it. But didn't have the quarantine like we have now.
Yeah, they released the plan for the year, and people who are living on campus who test positive for the coronavirus are just going to be like quarantined to these 2 specific dorms. and everyone else, like if you're an off campus student, you can either quarantine in your apartment or go home with your family. So like, some of these students can't go home.
I guess that's why you would quarantine in your apartment. Good old
Seems like
coronavirus.
It seems like going back to school in the middle of all of this is not the best idea, but it's kind of just the way things are playing out with the way this has become a political issue
Yeah.
and the way people think it's supposed to be handled, even though this isn't something that just normally happens. Did you see the interview that Trump did with someone, I don't know who he was, where Trump was like, yeah, well, actually, we didn't, like, there wasn't even a test for the coronavirus when I took office. And the guy was like, why would there be a test? Like, it wasn't a thing. I take it you haven't seen that based on your reaction.
No, that's news. That's news. I don't watch a whole lot of him. Oh, man. Please vote, people. Wow. Well, I don't know what I was expecting for this college discussion. I am far less prepared for this than I was for the high school one, but because I had a very specific place I wanted to direct the high school one. So here we are. I think the last thing on the list of stuff I have written down is do you think college is worth it? Which, like, you're still in it. So I think it might be hard for you to say.
Yeah, I think I did a paper in 8th grade about is college worth it, just looking at, like, salaries and statistics. And the conclusion of my paper was that college may not be worth it for everyone who is interested in, like, some students aren't ready for college, and pushing them into college will just push them into failure. And that some of the fastest growing industries were industries that required some form of education after high school, but nothing like a college degree. So like trades like a plumber or something. Those were some of the fastest growing and best paying things. For myself, I think college has been worth it. I think it's been a learning experience, not just about like education, but also learning about myself as a person, seeing the personal growth over the past few years. If it weren't for college, I'd probably still think I'd want to go into astronomy.
Yeah, and then being on this side of college and on this side of graduate school, which maybe we can talk about some other time. Financially at this point, it's very hard to say that college has been worth it, because as far as I know, like, now that I've had these temp jobs, I maybe now have had a job that required a college degree, but it's hard to say that these jobs could be done by, or could not have been done by, someone who did not have a college degree. So I don't think I've been in a position like that yet. And I had this, I don't know if you knew this, but I semi-seriously considered dropping out of college my junior year in the fall, because college, it made sense to be in college when I was pursuing an engineering degree or pursuing a math degree. But once I switched out of those things, I was like, why am I even doing this right now? Like, it seems like I could do the things I'm studying without needing to stay in college. And then ultimately I couldn't have gone into my graduate program, which I don't regret doing, except for maybe the price tag. But like, so I couldn't have done that without going to college or finishing college. but it's hard financially right now to justify the amount of money that I spent and the amount of money that a lot of us are spending or have spent on school. Part of me wishes I had taken more time before I went to maybe figure out more of a direction of what I wanted to do. I definitely, in graduate school, wish I had taken a semester off and then refocused and pushed in a slightly different direction. But here we are. So yeah, I think your 8th grade self was remarkably astute in your observations. Because that sounds pretty accurate from what I've seen.
Yeah. I'm in a lot of debt, and I mean, I maybe could have found, like, the personal growth that I've had, I maybe could have found that somewhere else that didn't cost me tens of thousands of dollars. But I mean, it's where I ended up. Make something work at some point, probably.
Yep. Hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
I know the last week or so has felt pretty good thus far, finding a new place to live and whatnot.
Yeah, I feel much better than I did a week and a half ago.
Yep. You were very excited to cross off your number 1 New Year's resolution.
Mm-hmm. Excited to be not where I was. Like, physically be not where I was.
Yeah. We didn't even, we touched on, but we didn't talk about the illicit substances differences.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of that.
Walking into your apartment building and walking through that door at the top of the stairs, just like every time, it was like getting hit in the face with the smell of the reefer.
The reefer? What are you, 60 years old?
That's what I say every time I smell it. Oh, someone's hitting that reefer. I don't get it. It smells like a skunk. Yeah, Bethel people did that, but they did it behind closed doors. The people who
people
did
here are fairly outspoken about it. It's not something that I've been interested in or wanting to participate in.
Yeah. And my thing at Bethel students sign a covenant that they won't participate in certain activities, among other things. But one of those things is drinking. For anyone, whether you're legal age or not, that you won't drink. And I didn't understand. I was like, but you signed your name to the thing. How hard is it to not drink? Especially when I was on my study abroad trip. It's like, how hard is it to not drink? But that was the decision people made.
Yeah, I think if some Bethel students came to Iowa State and just like went to a party, I think they might die.
It might depend on the Bethel students.
Just like out of shock.
I went to one party. It was a President's Day party. It was on campus. It was mostly cross-country people. And it was not terribly turnt. I wore my president's t-shirt. I didn't even remember what happened. It was just like a gathering.
Yeah, party culture is a little bit bigger here.